Roger Whitney, and I am so excited to talk to you because this is such an important subject. It's going to be on retirement. You were a financial advisor for over 25 years, and then you have this Retirement Answer Man podcast.
Yeah, for the last 8.5 years now.
Wow. And then I want to talk about the book, of course, that you have that sounds so interesting. But first of all, I want to know about, I'm going to ask you, how old are you?
I am 55.
Okay, well, you look like you're 35. You know, that's the new 50. That's the 50-year-old is the new 35. So in case
I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that.
Yeah, take it and run with it. Okay. So when have you retired, or, I mean, tell us the story, Roger. Tell us the story.
So I'm a certified financial planner, and I have a number of different designations. I always call myself a classically trained planner. But about 10 years ago, my entire life has been focused on the transition and living in a life without work. And that's when I started the podcast. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey where now in my advisory firm, we don't accept new clients. I have this Rock Retirement Club where we teach and empower people to not just figure out the financial part, but figure out the life part. And it's nice to finally know what you're supposed to be doing, right? Now, I think you asked me when am I retired and when do I plan on retiring?
Yeah.
The secret is I don't necessarily believe in the concept of retirement.
So what do you believe in? Yeah, I know. And excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that is so true, Roger. The concept, the idea of retirement, that just is not, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people.
I think it's more about retirement in the brochure sense is about, all the things you see on the brochure, right? A life of leisure, and you're basically moved to sitting on the park bench of life rather than being in the playground. And I would much rather be in the playground until I pass. But I use the word retirement because that's the word that we all know and we use to talk about things. But it's not what we think we want, right? And I think the idea is that we have to figure out the business side of it, right? The money side of it, for sure.
Right.
When we leave full-time work, it doesn't mean we don't stop committing ourselves to things. It just means we don't do it for money anymore.
Right. Or sometimes you do it for money, though, right? I mean, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Yes. What I have learned is that through talking to literally thousands of women and men, that when I ask them what they mean about retirement, they don't mean stopping work. The phrases that I hear are, I just want to get out of the rat race. I'm tired of traveling meetings. I want more control over my time and what I do with that time.
Yes.
And that I totally embrace. That's what I totally embrace.
Okay. So how did you come? I mean, of course, I'm 83, so I'm really old, but how did you come to that realization at the age of 45 or, whatever? I mean, that you were so young. How did you come to that understanding so young?
Well, I think part is I've walked this journey with so many people, and I saw what was working and what wasn't working for them, for sure. But I think a big part of the journey was my mother grew up mainly single family, right? So I had my mother and two sisters. So I grew up with a mother and two sisters, a lot of women. And my mother got her law degree when she was 40. And she didn't really want to, but she felt she had to. And she didn't even really like the practice of law. And she and I used to have these discussions when I was in high school of living for today and sacrificing for tomorrow. And she sacrificed a lot of her life to provide.
Okay, but can I ask you a question? Why did she feel like she had to do this at 40? Go to law school?
Oh, good. So she at that point she had remarried, and she worked with my stepfather.
Oh,
And they needed an attorney, and I mean, I was young, I don't know the
okay.
exact, but it sort of fell upon her.
Oh, okay.
But
all right.
But I observed her as this, angsty teenager and 20 something. And she and I would have discussions about, and literally she would use the phrases of, yes, I'm working, I'm going to law school, I'm doing all these other things. But when I get to this point, then I will have balance and enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And that then never came, because she passed away when she was 48.
What? No kidding.
And so I was 23 at the time.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
I think it, so the blessing that came out of that gave me especially in the vocation that I decided to go into, was the idea that, retirement is structured that you sacrifice yourself and then you will have this balance in life. And seeing firsthand how that didn't work out for my mother, and then eventually for my sister, who died right around the same age. That had an indelible impression on me of, this isn't there. Today is the day.
Yes.
And money is only part of the equation.
Yes.
And that's I think how a lot of it helped me understand that and start to advise and teach via the podcast and other things about the entire picture.
And I think what you said that really, I really can understand. Well, everything you said I can understand, but what you said that really made me think was, you're just working with people, advising them about money and seeing what they're going through, and that whole thing of, helping, you said that journey, that I can see where that would make a difference too, because you saw so many people, trying to, we got to get the money saved, and we got to, do this and that. And so I'm sure you saw a lot of cases of.
Yeah. And my profession hasn't really served the human experience very well, because it focuses so much on money.
Yeah.
And with, wonderful people like you that are living longer, they're more active, they're more experiential, that mathematically the traditional formulas for retirement don't work.
Yeah.
And so the answer is always, well, you better work longer, you better spend less. And all of those have a human cost, and there's got to be some in between. And that's what I focused on.
Well, I am telling you, it's just so exciting. So, okay. So you started this. What is it that you actually teach people? I have to tell you, and this is a personal thing, but my husband's 83 and he's still working. And of course, I have all this stuff going on. I'm writing a book and, and all kinds of stuff. But he is having trouble at 83, retiring, because he doesn't know what he would do. So and I think, and it's true, he's not a golfer. He's not a, whatever you have to be to retire. I don't know. But, so what advice do you give to people? How do you tell us some of the things that you say or teach to help people get ready for retirement? Everybody always says, well, you have to have a plan. You have to know what you're going to do. Or what if you don't have any idea what you're going to do? I mean, how do people start thinking about this?
Well, I think the key, I think it was Eisenhower said that plans are useless and planning is everything, right? Yeah. The idea, like your husband is a wonderful example of this. The idea that you can sit down and say, this is what I'll do when I'm retired. You can't do that. And what ends up happening is most of us in a career, especially in our 50s, 60s, and obviously 70s and 80s in your husband's case, we're at the top of our game. We're very competent and respected and have found our rhythm. And we are institutionalized, much like the prisoners in the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Right. You remember that movie?
Yeah.
Where we're institutionalized in this career hierarchy that serves us and it's comfortable. Yeah. And for some, thinking about what it's like on the outside, if you're a prisoner, or thinking about what it's like when you're retired, you have no clue. And it's actually intimidating because it disrupts your entire life cycle.
Well, yeah. And I mean, and it's so scary. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I don't think retirement should be a light switch. You know, if you think of a light switch, on or off, it's very binary. One thing that and this is, and as you're a perfect example of, in today's world, you can make it much more of like a dimmer switch. So like with someone like your husband example is, the first thing you want to do is just start to build some boundaries around work and life, right? Because modern work absorbs your life 24/7. We're all connected and everything else. So most people, especially in the corporate world or even entrepreneurial world, there's no boundaries to focus on their personal life. And so the first thing is to set boundaries, which means, hey, acknowledging I'm not on the corporate ladder anymore. I'm fine where I'm at, so I don't have to play that game anymore.
Right.
And set some hard boundaries of at X time I turn off. And I put work away and I give myself some margin to go explore life, right? And that can be very scary. So that when you're exploring life and you set these boundaries, the first thing that happens is you don't know what to do.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable. And you actually want to grasp for it because it's so comfortable, but
it is.
You have to embrace the uncomfortableness to just start doing things. And that would be, you know, because your husband, as an example, golf. I mean, I play golf, but golf, all these other things, you have to have a purpose in life, and you can't discover that intellectually. You have to discover it by doing things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, think of your children. I don't know if you have children or not, but like children, what do? I remember my two kids are in their 20s now. They tried gymnastics, and then they're passionate about that, and no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this, and I want to do baseball, and then I want to do football, and then I want to do bake. That's sort of the process that we have to go through, is just go play, and you'll fall into what your purpose is, right? For me, I know, and my wife, she's outside reading while we're doing this, is
you should bring her in.
This is with the podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. And through that, helping people think differently about this phase of life that we're talking about, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with the rest of my life. So it's not like working.
I know. Now I wrote this down, and it's so much the way Aging But Dangerous thinks also, where you said that your mission is to change the way the world thinks about retirement, one conversation at a time. I love that. And that of course is what I preach all the time about aging. It's like, you know, if I sat and thought about how old I was all the time, I'd probably get very depressed. I don't know. I never get depressed, so I don't know. But anyway, I just don't think about it. It just doesn't, it doesn't enter my mind. But I love that. I loved reading that because it's just it's so true. You know, one conversation at a time, you know, just like taking those little steps, you know, talking to people, I just think this is so exciting what you're doing. I don't think anyone else is doing that.
I don't know. I'm too busy.
I know.
Well,
I think, you know, and now, you know, a lot of our followers are in their 60s, you know, 50, this is for 50 and up, but I would say a lot of them are in their 60s and up. but they're still working. You know, a lot of them still have to work. And it's funny because when we started Aging But Dangerous, when I started it with my friend 14 years ago, that 50-year-old was so traumatized, Roger, because she was turning 50. And now that 50-year-old, like you, and I'm sure your wife, you know, and my daughter's 54, you know, now that 50-year-old's going on 300-mile bike rides and doing, you know, all kinds of stuff. So it really has changed in the last, you know, 14, 15 years. But now it's that 60-year-old that, and back then the 50-year-old, their kids were already in college. Now, a lot of those 50-year-olds to 60-year-olds still have kids at home, you know, because they had kids later. So, but it's like they are still working. They need to hear this so badly because it is a scary thing for them. And of course, it makes what makes it all the more scary, Rogers, if the money's not there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
well, let's talk about that for a second, because
yeah,
for a
that's a
large
biggie.
number of people, the money's not there, right?
Yeah.
The math doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the answer to that, if the math doesn't work, I mean, you can be frugal. I mean, there's only so much frugaling you can do, right?
Right.
The honest answer, if the money doesn't work for whatever reason, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter the reason of how someone may have got to where they are. The answer is working longer.
The answer is
right?
What?
Is you're to work longer.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the answer, so if the answer is working longer, the hard part with that answer is a lot of people don't get much joy or meaning from the job that they do.
Mm-hmm.
It takes too much of their life.
Yeah.
And so the thought of working longer sounds crappy.
Yeah.
And so, which is true for some people. But you have to ask, well, if the answer is I have to work longer, I think a better question, a good question to ask would be, well, how can I work longer and have more time freedom? How can I find an in-between between my daily grind and not working? So, and I have numerous examples of people that have pivoted from their daily grind, and maybe they didn't earn as much, but they had more time freedom, more remote work, or they surrounded themselves in an environment that was much more joyful to go to. Because if you're going to work longer, if that ends up having to be the answer, well, then the question before the house is, well, how do I do this and actually enjoy it and have time freedom? And there are lots of options that when you and I were growing up weren't available to us.
You, sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, they weren't available to us, right? We didn't have the idea
that's
of
true.
part-time work, remote work, all sorts of things.
Right. It's that's so true. And then you always get that kind of fear factor in there, and especially for women. I have a lot of single women friends, and they're in trouble financially, and they're scared, and they're getting older, and it's hard for me to talk to them and say, you got to just keep going, and you got to get, you just, got to stay positive, and you got to stay this and that. And my dad lived to be 105, and he was one of the most positive people that I've ever known. And so I just learned a lot from him. But it's hard for these women. It's very hard for me to talk to them and say, stay positive.
Totally.
And just,
well, can I address that for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's critical. That is critical. And I don't know if stay positive, I don't think is complete enough.
Right.
And I've made some tremendous errors in my life. And I've had to work through fixing them. And sometimes things have happened to me that I didn't even have any control over, that I had to deal with. And, I love the phrase hope, the term hope.
Yep.
Right. And there's three things you need for hope. And you can't have hope without all three. The first one is some vision or goal of a better future for yourself, right? Which is, I can see something better for me tomorrow, the next hour, the next year. So we have to create some vision for a better future for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not enough, because that's just wishful thinking.
Right, right.
The second thing we need to have is agency, to feel like we have some control over acting to make that future state better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we don't have agency, we feel like the world is just beating us down and we can't do anything.
Right.
But even if you have a vision, so okay, my life could be better, and I have agency, the other thing you need are pathways. Because if you're able to act, but you don't know what to do to act, you're just sort of mannequin and nothing, you don't go anywhere. Right? It's like acting if you feel like you're drowning, you're just using your agency just to tread water.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to develop pathways to apply yourself, to take little baby steps to work towards something. And it's not just one pathway, because there are multiple ways you can find things. So I would encourage anybody who's feeling hopeless is to just start and believe that you can have a better future, but then think of, what can I do? Not some big fancy thing, but what can I do today to take a little baby step towards it? And then just keep finding pathways, right?
Right.
One pathway that a lot of women have found, no doubt, is listening to you, right? To get people, surround yourself with people that are supporting the journey that you're on.
Exactly.
I think one initial thing you can do with agency, and I did this professionally about 10 years ago when I was starting the podcast, is a lot of people didn't, in my circle of professional friends, didn't know what I was doing and didn't really believe in it. So I segregated them, and I had to create still my friends, but I had to create a different network that was supporting what I believed I could do.
Yes.
And
I did the same thing.
Oftentimes we need to not get rid of, but to compartmentalize people that aren't going to support where we want to go. We got to be around people that are like, yes, you can do that, and help you work the problem.
Yes, yes. And you're so right. And I mean, so many of my friends don't even know what I do half the time, and that's okay. But like you said, they're still friends. And it's good to support the people that we know, that we do talk to. But all right, so tell me about your book. Is your book going, okay, let me read this. It says, Rock Retirement, a simple guide to help you take control and be more optimistic about the future. Now, that is exactly what we were just talking about. So if I go out and buy your book and I'm 55, 60 years old, is it going to help me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, how? How is it going to help me?
When I wrote the book, right, as I was writing the book, I bought every retirement book I could find, and I had read a lot of them. And
you were so young. You were so young. That's what gets me. But go ahead.
Well, I like finance. I like retirement planning. So I'm a geek about this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I bought these books, and I like this stuff, and they all bored me to death.
Yeah.
Because they were all about tactical money stuff. And they didn't speak human. And so when I wrote the book, I wrote it to help. It will help people. It's not going to tell you how to do everything. There are things that you can do, steps to follow. But I think the major way that it can help someone is to shift their thinking about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. One, it talks human. It's easy read.
Oh,
and it talks more wisdom than tactics. And I think if you can get one little paradigm shift around, hey, it's not quit work or work. There's a lot of in between there where you can create the kind of life that you want. It's going to have hopefully some shifts in how we think about things that might allow us to be more creative in creating a great life.
Boy, I tell you, you got very wise at a very young age. I think that's so fabulous. You're
Thank you.
very, you're very, I mean, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. Um, your book is, when did you write your book? How many years ago?
19, I believe. In
Really?
2019. I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Roger, how did you know
What?
you were like 35?
No, no, in 2019, not 19 years ago. In
Oh, I was going
2019.
to say, please
Yeah, I
don't
think it
tell
was
me.
2000. No, in
Okay.
2019. Yeah,
So like 3 years ago,
like 3, 4 years ago.
4 years
Yeah,
ago. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's you,
Okay, yeah.
you are something if you would have written that too. Uh, well, okay. So that it sounds very good. I can't wait to get it because, and like you were saying, and this is what I say all the time. It's about all ages. There's just everybody gets so hung up on this age number, and it's just not about that. It's just,
Not at all.
it's like everything you're saying, everything I say, it's like, no, it's a whole, getting ready.
Some of the most
Yeah.
alive people I know, and I guess I'll include you as one of them now that we know
Yeah.
each other, are in their 70s and 80s, and they're still active and working and vibrant. Um, the way I phrase it is when we think about retirement, it's always like we just want to be able to survive and not run out of money, right?
Yes.
Um, and in the goal, the promise of like our show, the podcast, is we don't want you to just survive. We want you to actually have the confidence so you can lean in and rock retirement. You can lean in and not just have a great life today, but feel confident that you're on a trajectory to be okay tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and if we don't, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
And if you don't have that perspective that I'll be okay tomorrow, what we end up doing is sacrificing our life today.
Yeah.
And like my mom, and all we have is today. We want to be good stewards, but we can't delay as much as everybody tells us we have to.
I know. Yeah, that is so true. It's really interesting because I have an only child and she's 54. And I said to her just yesterday, we were talking and I said, I won't go into detail, but I said, you make sure you keep up with your tests and your, like these medical things, there's some medical things.
Yes.
And I said, because I know when you're 50, you think you're going to live forever. And you just need to make sure that everything's under control. And she said, no, mother, I think when you're in your 50s, you think you're on the downhill and it's not going to be, forever. And I'm like, who is this child that I raised? It's like, and I thought, gee, I wonder if 50-year-olds feel that way. I don't remember feeling that way at all, but maybe it's because I'm a lot older, but I was really shocked at that.
I have a lady that I've known and worked with for 20 years, and she's 80.
Yeah.
And whenever we're talking and I'm moaning a little bit about being 55, she sort of smacks me upside my head.
Yeah.
She says, "Shut up, you're young."
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't talk about feeling old. You're 55. Yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah. But that is shocking. It's like, because when you're in your 50s, you have so much ahead of you. And but what I love about, and we won't talk about all that age thing, but what I love about your book, and I can't wait to read it, is I think it sounds like it's just for everybody. I mean, it's like man, woman, young, old, whatever. Because like you said, Roger, they really need to have hope. They need that hope. And oh my gosh, you are doing such a good deed. I can't even tell you it's just such a fabulous. I talked to somebody else, I don't know how long ago it was, about a whole retirement thing, totally different picture than what you have. And yours makes so much sense to me. even though, you know, I mean, there's such a difference in age and everything, but that doesn't even matter. I just think you sound like you really have some good tips for people, and, you know, to think in different ways. And that's what it's all about, is, you know, like thinking in different ways, and not just your normal tunnel thinking.
Well, I've been really blessed, you know, with I walk, you know, from in our practice side, I walk life. All I work with are clients that are in all of these phases that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I've been very blessed to walk life with them and participate. And so any wisdom I have comes from being awake and helping them deal with, you know, all sorts of good, you know, good things and bad things and everything in between. And so I just try to pay attention. And since I don't think about anything else, I mean, I don't watch the news. I'm not on social media. I do one thing, and it's changed my life. And any wisdom I have come from walking life with people that are actually doing it, that are ahead of me on the journey.
Yeah. Are you going to write another book?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Good.
Yes. I actually have two